Hey everyone, it's Matt, aka Stumblebee, and I just wanted to give you the lowdown on what you're about to listen to. In my last video about Infinites, I put in a minute-long clip of an interview that I did with lead designer for Lab Zero Games, Mike Z. Since then, I've gotten some requests to put the full interview up, so that's what this is. I'm currently working on a new video about fighting game bosses that'll hopefully be done by the end of May 2020, so I hope this holds you over for now. So, without further ado, here's Mike Z. I guess I will kick us off. So how does your designer brain and fighting game brain look at bugs and exploits like Infinites? Actually, you know what? I kind of would actually like to kind of backtrack a little bit because
Sure.
I got reminded of Keats made another post about disliking long combos, and he was like, clever mix-ups, great, interesting gameplay, fantastic. Long combos, not a fan. Why would a game designer not be a fan of, and I guess to some extent a fighting game player, not be a fan of long combos specifically?
So I can answer that as a designer, and the short answer is that as a designer, what you would like is for people to be making meaningful, useful decisions the entire time they're playing the game, right? So if I get hit by a long combo, the thought, or I guess the level one thought is that I'm spending time not making decisions as a player because the other person is doing something to me, right? My particular view is not necessarily about the length of the combo, it's about the damage. So in a game like ST, right, you have, we'll ignore the random damage part of it, but
Sure.
damage in ST is really, really, really high, right? Like Ken gets cross up forward, stand something, dragon punch, and you're stunned, and it does 70%. You're sometimes stunned, and it sometimes does 70%, and then you die off of that. That's as bad to me as an infinite that will take off your whole health bar, even though the infinite takes longer, because it's the same number of decisions overall, even though a long combo means that there's a small amount of time without you making decisions time-wise. Then the decisions over the course of the match is only based on damage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Storm Sent DHC in Marvel 2 is pretty short. It's like launch 1 2 3 4 lightning attack, super launch 1 2 3 4 rocket punch, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty short. You're also down a character. So
Yeah.
it's not, I guess I don't look at the lack of two-playerness necessarily as just the length of the combos. I look at it as the use of whatever you did. And actually, this is going to sound really weird, but I'm slightly in favor of longer combos with the same damage, because what that means is you have to do more right in order to get that damage. Right? If I can do jab strong fierce special and that does 70% of your life, or I have to do some crazy refly thing with Iron Man or whatever to get that same damage, I had to be better at the game to get the same reward.
Right.
In the case where I was doing a longer combo.
Sure.
Right? So people who dislike long combos tend to dislike it because they take time in which you're not thinking. But if you do a 20-second long combo and it does a third of their health bar, in design terms, that's really as fine as doing 2 hits and doing 20% of their health bar. It's just whether or not you care about waiting through it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I guess the next... Sorry, continue.
No, please. You were about to make another point.
I guess the next part of that is the other thing that you can really dislike about long combos is when you don't have to think at all while people are doing them to you. So Skullgirls has resets. Marvel 2 has resets. Marvel 3 even has resets. People just don't have to do them. Killer Instinct has combo breakers, right? You have to be paying attention the entire time you're getting hit, or you'll end up in a worse situation. Games like BlazBlue or Marvel 3, the way that people actually ended up playing it, you don't really have to pay attention while people are hitting you, because they're going to do the thing that they're going to do, and either you die or you don't. And when they let you out, you have a period of invincibility, right?
Right.
Sometimes in BlazBlue, if they drop their combo and you didn't tech, that's a point at which you should have been paying attention, but you can also just hold the direction you want to take in Tekken and continually tap buttons and it accomplishes the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay attention to throws in BlazBlue, but that window's really long. So there's not a lot of time where you're like really required to pay the same amount of attention you are while you're playing neutral.
Right.
Right. So
That's kind of a reason that I was going to write about like why Marvel 2's infinites were a little bit more forgivable than a lot of the other games that do also have infinites, because I feel like specifically in Marvel 2 and in Skullgirls, like you really need to be paying attention while you're getting comboed, because like at a certain point, if you're Sentinel and somebody else is doing the ROM on you, like they're gonna have to go for a reset if they don't feel like losing Magneto once they drop that combo inevitably.
I mean, or they do Tempest and you die. I
Sure.
think you missed a big part of that, which
Uh-huh.
is not necessarily that infinites are more forgivable in Marvel 2 because resets exist. It's that infinites, quote unquote, because a lot of them aren't actually infinite, but
Yeah.
100% in Marvel 2 are a lot more forgivable because most of the people that you can play have them, right? I can kill you with a couple meters just as effectively as you can kill me with an infinite. So
Right.
it's not necessarily that they're more forgivable in that game. It's that more of the cast is broken in that particular way. So it doesn't matter as much. If you look at a game like Battle Fantasia, where combos are really short for the most part, they're like jump in, standing button, special move.
Mhm.
And then there are infinite combos for several of the characters. And there was even an infinite set play for Don Valve in the arcade. That infinite is way less forgivable because it is so far different from the things that the rest of the cast has.
That was
Right. So it's not necessarily
that was the SPD Infinite
yeah.
basically.
So that
Yeah.
was the so in the arcade version, they messed up and you always went through a frame of standing after wake up before you could do anything. So and most things weren't throw invincible. So like there were I think 3 throw invincible supers that were reversals in the whole game. So Don Valve command through you and then did another meaty command throw which is active for like 8 or 10 frames on your wake up. You couldn't jump it. Your only retaliation was a reversal throw invincible super. So he has like 10 O's against the majority of the cast. Um, it's a
Yeah.
good case study, right? Because Battle Fantasia is like on the one hand, it's basically ST, where combos are just like 1, 2 special, and that's it. And on the other hand, it has infinites and unescapable set play. So it really shows you how unbalanced those aspects of fighting games can be when the rest of the game has nothing to do with them.
Right.
Also, if you're going to use infinites as examples, I wouldn't necessarily use ROM because although the way that damage scaling works in Marvel 2 means that like I think it's like 4 reps of ROM does the same as 5 fierces, right? Because you can do like launch, roundhouse, fierce, roundhouse, land, crouch, roundhouse,
Yeah.
and like I think it's 4 reps of ROM does the same amount of damage as that. But ROM has a lot of jabs, and jabs let you out really quickly.
Hmm. Because
Because the
that
Undizi in Marvel 2
right.
is more for jabs than it is for mediums, and it's more for mediums than it is for fierces. So there are better examples to use than that specific one. But like Magneto will kill Sentinel if he hits him with a couple meters because you can do unmashable Tempest setups on him.
Hmm.
Like the damage in Marvel 2 was so high for the all of the characters that are tournament viable, basically, that infinites just meant more characters had the high damage, right? Like imagine if HVB ended after 1, DHCs didn't reset your damage scaling, and like a lot of the other glitches that increased your damage, like the Juggernaut glitch or like the Gamma Crush glitch and stuff like that, didn't exist.
Hmm.
Then Iron Man's Infinite would be a really big deal
Right.
because
Because
he would
he
be the
would have
character that can
right.
do that. But since Cable can guard break you and then kill you, and you didn't have an opportunity to do anything, and it's safe on block, like Iron Man Infinite is just like, okay, Iron Man's viable instead of like, well, Iron Man's trash, right?
Right. Yeah. I
Um,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. So the other thing that I was going to say was, it's when people talk about not liking long combos, mostly what they mean is I don't like spending a period of time not playing the game, and I think they get focused on the time that they're not playing versus how much thinking they should be doing during that time versus how much of the match that actually takes up. Right, because like in the original BlazBlue CT, I could do a 5-hit combo that did 80% damage on you as Tager, and if you bursted at any point, I could super you on reaction, and you just lost the round. So, at most, 2 touches for Tager was a win.
Right.
Whereas I keep wanting to call her V13, so I'll just go with that. Whereas V13 could combo you like for 20 seconds, and it would do maybe 40%. It was just really annoying, and you couldn't burst it because it was all burst safe and whatever. But like the annoyance factor is a lot of what people are talking about. I think how do I put this? Okay, so in Skullgirls, the way that the damage scaling works out between the ratios is really simple. It's like this. I assumed that the average combo was about 7k out of 14,300 at the time that we released the game. So the balance between the damage and the health for teams of 2, teams of 3, and teams of 1 is such that the same number of 7k combos from any one of those will kill the other one.
So
right? So it takes
the same
about
for the 3 to kill the 1 and the same amount of combos that it takes like a 1 to kill a 3 or a 1 to kill a 2.
Yeah. So if it's 2v2, it's like 4 and a little bit 7k combos to kill the team because it's like 2 and then like 1 small touch to kill a character. So it's 6 touches, right, to kill a team with like that basic damage value.
Right.
It's still 6 touches for a team of 3 to kill a solo. And it's still 6 touches for a solo to kill a team of 3. But what that means is that a team of 3 does about a sixth of a solo's health, which looks like not very much. And a solo does over half of a trio's character, right? Because 6 touches for 3 characters means 2 per character.
Right.
So it feels like a lot more, even though over the course of the match, it's almost exactly the same amount.
That's a cool.
And then you get into things like options like trios and duos have assists that they can use, but they can also get double snapped and things like that. But the basic utility of a combo is about the same for all the different teams. And the time that it takes is also vastly different because like solo big band's combo is like crouch short, crouch medium kick, crouch fierce, brass knuckles, super, right? Whereas Valentine is like doing lots of technical things and OTGing you and launching you into poison loads. And it's like the result of both of those things is the same.
I just want to take a quick break and just like say that I fucking love Big Band. That's like one of my favorite fighting game characters of all time. I just like big boys and I like that era of music and just that was a really good game.
Yeah. We knew who his voice actor was going to be from before we even finished the original game, let alone had done the crowdfunding and actually got to make the character
Brown.
Because we met Rich Brown while he was a cameraman at game trailers. And like he showed up to like take us down to the area where they were going to record. I think I was doing the promo for one of the characters, like the explanation of their moves and stuff. And he came down and was like, "Just wait, please." And we were like, okay, we're definitely going to use you for something. Do you want to be a voice actor? And 4 years later, we finally got to do it.
Oh, it's such a great character. So kind of going back to the number of decision points for long combos.
Yep.
Whenever you have an infinite, you don't get to make any decisions because if executed correctly, the infinite should be the end of the round, or at least the end of the character. Which in multiple character games, I feel like infinites are just a little bit more forgivable because you do have another character coming in.
Well, that depends on which game you're talking about and which characters you're talking about. I'm gonna interrupt you here, but okay. So the most egregious example of this is not Marvel 2. Actually, it is X-Men versus Street Fighter, which actually has 200% combos because the frame that they put the incoming character into on the first frame when they're off screen is actually neutral. And you can't block. So if you time an attack that reaches off screen, like Gambit's Jump Fierce or something, to where that character is going to be, you can continue the combo that killed the other character and they can't do anything about it. So in that case, infinites are busted, right? The next case is Marvel 2, which is close with guard breaks, because if you are a character that can't get out of guard breaks or they have a guard break you can't get out of, because a lot of characters actually have inescapable guard breaks if executed correctly, since all moves have startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can time it so that within 3 frames of your block stun ending, they're touching you with something else. And if you had immediately push blocked or push blocked anywhere in there, the rest of the moves in the sequence are also timed so that when your push block could possibly end, they're touching you right afterwards. Like, there are unescapable guard breaks. And especially with Iron Man, there are guard breaks that also deal with it when you decide to take the hit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily that the combo is over. It's just that you felt like you had a chance to get to play. Eddie's triple unblockable is a decent example of this from Guilty Gear. All of them up through even Exerd, like first version, had unblockables with Eddie on Wake Up. But it was like you technically had a chance to do something. The requirement was that you get a 1-frame input perfectly, or the other person just continues to do the thing that they were doing anyway. So that's not really an out, right? But even though that's not really a humanly usable out, it's still an infinitely bigger out than a combo has, right? Which is one of the reasons people actually were less frustrated by Eddie's unblockables than by anything else, because at least
you had a chance.
At least it feels like you had a chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a lot of people tell me when they first pick up Skullgirls that the resets just feel like they're a combo, right?
I can see
because they're really quick, and when you're not used to it, you didn't block the next thing.
Yeah.
But the difference between a reset and a 100% combo is that you had a chance to get out. And in Skullgirls, they're like humanly doable chances. They're not just like 1-frame windows on things. So you had a chance to escape, whereas with an infinite, you didn't. Whether you did it correctly is different, but it was there.
So whenever we talk about thinking on defense, whenever you're in a long combo, and whenever you finally do get to the point in the combo where there is a reset, when is it? Where is the line between clever reset and set play? Are they one and the same?
No. Okay, so I think. Okay, so I'll start by saying that to me, and from what I've observed in a lot of different games now, set play is the heat death of a game, right? If your game devolves to set play, it's just over. The real definition of set play, not the Skullgirls community definition of set play, which is just do a bunch of resets in a row. So the real definition of set play is put the opponent in a situation where the number of options that they have are limited. For example, on Wake Up. So you do what is now called a hard knockdown, so they can't tech and they have to recover in place. And then their options are limited by time because they always wake up at the same recovery speed, and limited by their actual options, right? They have to reversal on the first frame, or they have to block whatever it was that you're doing, or they'll be hit by it. So real set play is putting the opponent in a situation where their options are limited and you have a series of inputs that covers multiple or all of the options that they are presented with. For example, there was that thing in Street Fighter V, I don't remember which season, but Abigail had the unblockable charge that he could do that broke armor.
2.5?
And
I don't know.
Yeah, and there were characters that were just completely screwed by that on Wake Up because they had no options that could deal with it, and it was not blockable, right? There are other examples, like there's one from Street Fighter 4, the jump in sweep OS thing that beat FDing because it touched you, and it beat invincible backdashes because it didn't touch you, and it was a safe jump against reversals. So it's like, so what set play is a situation where you no longer have to think. You go into training mode, you practice the execution for the thing that you want to do, and the inputs that you're doing cover all or most of the options from the other person, regardless of their guess. And they have to guess, right? So set play is execution beating thinking. And in the cases where that's true in a game, that's when the game starts to deteriorate, because the other person has to make a really important decision, and if they're wrong, a lot of times set play loops back into itself.
Right, because
and if they're right, you didn't really risk anything because you blocked whatever they did, or you threw whatever they did, or whatever else it was, and you didn't have to guess. You simply did the inputs that were given to you, and those inputs and the way that you executed them handle all of the other person's options because of the way move interactions work.
Right.
So no thinking on your part, just execution. Safety on your part, thinking on their part, guessing on their part, and huge risk on their part.
Right.
That's what set play is.
I remember you saying yesterday, 2 days ago, whenever we last talked, that as a designer, you think that set play is the heat death of the universe.
Yes.
But as a player, you use that shit because it's there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's the other reason that set play is the heat death of a fighting game, because nobody's going to choose not to do it. Right? If it's there and it means I have to think less than you and my payoff is bigger than yours, you damn right I'm going to use it as a player. If the gambit glitch didn't get you punched in the back of the head, people would use it, right? The job of a game developer is to ensure as much as they possibly can that what's available to the players is fair for some like pretty narrow definition of fair.
Yeah.
I actually don't think that it should be up to the players to decide what's too good. At least in nowadays when we have games that we can patch, right? Like when Marvel 2 came out, that was the version of Marvel 2. There was never another one.
And if you didn't like it, you had to go play something else.
Yeah. So, well, but it's not just that. It's that, how do I put this? Like, banning is a strategic decision more than anything else. Banning is the people playing the game saying, we really like this part. This part exists, but it ruins this part. So we're going to choose to ignore this part so that we can play the part of it that really works.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'll give you an easy example that's not Meta Knight or Akuma or any of that stuff, but it's X-Men versus Street Fighter, right? There's a subset of the community that plays X-Men versus Street Fighter without infinites. And the definition of what an infinite is varies among communities, but it's usually like 2 or 3 reps of the same thing is too much. Mm-hmm. Because they really like how X-Men versus Street Fighter works. They like how the characters work. They like how the interactions work. And I got to tell you, I love all that stuff too. But they recognize that infinites turn the game into something completely different from what it is if they didn't exist.
Yeah.
And that the developers never had a chance to fix them. I mean, they had several versions of the game, but they never actually like managed to do anything really useful to fix them. The closest that they came was Marvel 2, actually, with how they changed flank screen around and when it was caused and the rest of that. Anyway, so banning something is not necessarily about whether it's busted. It's about whether it's antithetical to the way that people think or have gotten used to the game being played. Right? And I can give you a better example of this, which is wobbling. Right? So let's put this in some context. Wobbling is a thing in Melee where ice climbers throw you and then they take your stock.
It took me 3 minutes to learn.
Okay.
I'm terrible at this. But I was able to do it. So let's compare.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's not that hard. You have to do the desync, and your other character has to be alive, which against good players. Yeah, but against good players, like they can get rid of Nana, right? Okay, but let's put this in some context. Mm-hmm. Melee is a game where the best character in the game has a 1-frame jump cancelable attack. Okay, that also happens to reflect projectiles. Just think about that for a second. You can't beat it. You can only trade with it. It has a large hitbox. You can jump cancel out of it if they shield it, so you can continue pressure off of doing this. That's an insane design for a move. But people accept this as part of playing Melee, right? Fox is still the best character, but like that move is really stupid. Just in design terms, that move is incredibly stupid. However, no one talks about banning Shine because Shine fits into what they think Melee is as a fighting game, right? Shine is a move that you can use that the other person can block, that if you want to combo off of it, you have to be able to catch their directional influence and the rest of that stuff. Like, people that play Melee think about combos as not necessarily guaranteed. You need to pay attention to what the other person is doing and do something appropriate to take care of it. Wobbling is antithetical to that, right? Wobbling is, I got you with my thing, which wasn't an attack, right? It was a grab.
Right.
So you had to dodge it instead of block it. And then you lost and you didn't have anything you could do about it. It's not actually any stupider in design terms than Shine, but it definitely doesn't fit the way that people think Melee should work. I don't necessarily think it's wrong to ban something on power terms, but power terms is hard to describe, right? So if you look at Akuma in ST, the point of banning Akuma is that if you didn't ban Akuma, there's no reason to play any of the other characters, because you can play Akuma in a way that none of the other characters in the game was built to deal with. So you're banning him because he destroys the meta and is the only character that's viable if he's allowed, right? It's an Ivan Ooze sort of scenario.
Yeah.
There are arguments that Osagat is too powerful and people should play just Osagat if Osagat is allowed, and there are disagreements in the community and whatever, but Akuma is basically the provable version of that, right? No one can deal with Air Fireball. So you need to not play him for the game to not devolve to just playing him. Meta Knight in Brawl is the other, like, really famous one. He has a bunch of disjointed attacks. He's super heavy, so he's really hard to kill. He kills you really easily. He has 6 freaking jumps, and he can fly around the entirety of Hyrule Castle. Like, he has a bunch of abilities that, added together, make him a character that none of the other characters in the game can really deal with. And if he exists in that universe, he's the person to play, right? It's not a question of, like, is he ST Chun and he's slightly more powerful than most of the rest of the characters put together. He's playing a different game from the rest of the characters, and so is Akuma in ST, right? Like, those are clear cases where you can talk about banning something. So the major reason to ban things to me is that either, well, okay, so the competitive reason to ban something is that it turns the game into just that if you don't. And that can be either a character that everybody has to use, like Kokonoe, when she first came out, was the same thing. You literally could not fight against Kokonoe if she was played properly with anyone. It didn't matter who you were. Once she got the black hole, that was it. Or the Gambit glitch in Marvel 2, which isn't necessarily an overpowered character. That means that that's the only thing you would want to pick, but it goes against the fundamental purpose of the game, right? Gambit does that glitch and the fight is over. So people look at Marvel 2 and go, why would you ban things in this game? It's ridiculous. And the answer is because those things that were banned turn the game from being a lopsided, unbalanced 2-player experience to a 1-player experience. And that makes all the difference, right? The Gambit glitch is a no execution version of a Dead Body Infinite, right? I don't know if anyone knows anything about Marvel 2. So the Gambit glitch was basically, you do a thing with Gambit, you do a snapback with assist 2, you jump off the wall, and he goes off the top of the stage, and that's it. He never comes back, and no one can hit him except for Spiral if you were already prepared to hit him, or Bison, who no one plays. And, like, that's it. The round is over, right? And you can do that at 99 seconds if you land the first hit. And the outcome is already decided. So that feels like you're not playing the game anymore. You're just racing to the win condition or the lose condition, depending. Dead Body Infinites are kind of the same thing, but execution based. So when you kill the character, if you played a character who was fast enough to catch the dead body once you hit them, you could repeatedly OTG the dead body, keep them out of the corner, go the other way, go back across the stage, and do that until time ran out, right? That was another version of making the game completely 1-player. It was more execution intensive, so you could mess it up, but it still made the game 1-player if you didn't. And I think that's the point at which you can talk about banning something on power terms, right? So the difference between the Gambit glitch or the Dead Body Infinite and a regular Infinite in Marvel 2 is that the first two end the game,
right,
and the second one kills a character, right? And many teams in the game can kill a character, but few of them can just end the round,
Hmm. Yeah,
And
if
to
you want to
me,
do it,
that's the point. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to
To
do
me,
it normally, then you need to like guard break twice, and then you need to put them in a situation where they are dead immediately. But like you said, with the Gambit glitch and with Dead Body Infinites, that's a timer scam at that point.
yes, you have removed their opportunity to do anything about it, right? And even if they had like a very small spot to do something about it, that's still something they could do, right?
Hmm.
And that to me is the difference between infinites and everything else. Or well, people use infinites as a stand-in for 100% combos, right?
Right.
But to me, it's the difference between 100% combos and everything else. You don't come back from a 100% combo. You don't do something correctly and get out. They mess up, or you lost your chance to play. And when something removes the other person's chance to play, that's a point at which you can have a discussion for banning it. And lo and behold, we're back to wobbling. If you're really good at melee, it doesn't matter how the other person DIs, but you still had to react to something they were going to do,
Hmm.
right? And they still felt like they had a chance to do something because they could do the stupid DI and possibly get out of it, right?
Hmm.
Whereas with wobbling, I touch you, that's your stock.
Right.
And that feels fundamentally different from the rest of the game where there are combos that will kill you and there's rest and stuff like that. But it doesn't feel like you had no choice at all.
Yeah, because like you
So
said,
to
there's
me,
DIs, there's choices to make in the process of dying. Whereas
yes.
wobbling, you
So
just hit A at 200 BPM, and that's 300%.
yep. So to me, that's the the point at which you can talk about the point at which you can talk about banning something in terms of power
Hmm.
is when the power disparity is big enough that no one else in the game has anything like it, or it completely removes the other person's ability to play.
And
Ivan Ooze,
oh,
if you put him in any other game, like let's talk about Ivan Ooze as an actual fighting game character, right? He can be invincible whenever he wants. He can let's just end it at that. He can be invincible whenever he wants. He can be invincible out of hit stun, and he can combo you forever or block stun you forever, and that's it. He's not comboing you, right? But he still removes your ability to play the game as a two-player game. So he's something that you can talk about banning.
mhm.
Unfortunately, or I guess rather fortunately, that's not often when banning comes up in discussion, right? Because games, at least nowadays, have gotten pretty good at not having stuff that just completely destroys the two-player part of the game.
Mhm.
However, banning nowadays is talking about power disparities and fun, and goes back to the rest of the stuff that I said before, which is it within the spirit of the game before that thing was discovered? A decent example of this recently is the Reality Stone Infinite for Spider-Man in Marvel Infinite, right? Which is an actual infinite combo that you can set up off of things while you're normally playing that the other person can tag out of, right? If they have another character left, because they
uh,
can bring the other character in when the Reality Stone hits. They have a couple frames,
huh. Okay, I thought it
right?
was. I
When
thought.
you no
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it was on your last character when it was really dumb because they couldn't do anything.
Okay.
But the thing about it is, it's not necessarily just that it's an infinite. It's that it takes forever, it looks stupid, and it doesn't feel like the entire rest of the game worked, right? Marvel Infinite had evolved to a certain point where nobody cared about what Chun-Li's face was anymore.
Uh,
Then along came that, and people felt like that wasn't the way that the game should work,
mhm.
right? Brawl Meta Knight was the same thing. He just feels like he makes the rest of the characters irrelevant. He has a bunch of things that are better than the rest of the cast. Bayonetta was kind of the same thing. She has a bunch of things that are better than the rest of the cast. And when people are good enough at everything, they sort of make every other character irrelevant.
Right.
And in order for you to win, they have to mess up their play. There's nothing that you can do about it, right? Like I've pretty much played one of the worst matchups in actually two of the worst matchups in I think all of fighting game history that aren't just 10-0s, which is Tager versus Carlin New and Rachel and Arakune in CT, and Tager versus Hazama in CS.
Couldn't pay me to do
Um,
that.
those matchups are bad enough that it doesn't matter if you give Tager twice as much health or twice as much damage. He doesn't have the tools to win no matter what.
Mhm.
The other person, well, okay, I'll take that back about CT. He had the tools in CT. That's one of the reasons I liked CT. You needed one chance, and you definitely got one chance. CS, Taker versus Hazama, I would probably class as the worst fighting game matchup I've ever had the misfortune of being on the receiving end of.
Solid 8-2.
Because, hmm?
Solid 8-2.
Yeah, solid 8-2. A solid 9.5 at least. Because unless Hazama makes mistakes or gives you opportunities, you have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even magnetize him unless he lets you. Anyway, sorry, we started from a different point, which
No,
was
yeah, it's all good.
why were infinites mostly considered acceptable in Marvel 2? And the answer is because an infinite in Marvel 2 just helped make that character viable against all the other characters that could already kill you. If I were to go back and look at Marvel 2, I would say that probably the most damaging slash things you would consider banning that weren't just outright the Gambit glitch and Dead Body Infinites would be guard breaks as a concept and double snaps as a concept. Because I'm sorry, like I love Marvel 2 a lot, and playing it in training mode is the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like you can lose weeks to that, but the game has basically devolved into double snap, kill the assist near the beginning of the round, and like that's boring as hell to me. Because if you call your assist at the beginning of the round and get hit, you just lost your assist. If you don't call your assist at the beginning of the round and they do, you're in a much worse position and probably got your point character hit and snapped out, and then your assist got guard broken. And if neither person calls their assist at the beginning of the round, it happens the next time somebody calls their assist. Like that, to me, is really freaking boring and doesn't feel like Marvel 2 felt when people were doing not that, right? It's basically
Right.
X-Men versus Street Fighter without the infinites. And guard breaks is the same thing. Actually, if I could fix one thing about Marvel 2, it wouldn't even be mid-stage double snaps. It would be guard breaks. Because, again, like I said, you can do unescapable guard breaks, but there's also the vast majority of the cast just can't do anything about them, period.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, there's no amount of it feels really amazing to know that the next character is dead from the aggressor side that comes anywhere close to balancing out give me more two-player action with this character.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If lots of Marvel 2 games didn't end in okay, well, you just died to Cable, he has 3 bars, so you may as well give up, the game would be more interesting as a whole.
And so, what if they re-release Marvel 2 somewhere down the line? They get a new license with Marvel. It's probably not going to happen for a long, long time. But let's say they fix the infinites. They fix all of the glitches. They fix the unblockables. They fix guard
Oh, I
breaks. They
wouldn't do
fix
half
double
of that.
snaps. Right, but like what I'm saying is, like, what if they did? What would happen to Marvel 2 from would the rest of the roster outside of like the god tier and like some of the top tier, would like any of those get better, or would it just
No.
kind of be like a painfully boring game?
In fact, it would be the opposite. If you fixed guard breaks, several characters would become more viable immediately, and almost everybody would be better against Cable, which like would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And almost everybody would be better against Sentinel, which would also be fine. You would also have to fix the unblockables on incoming, because if you hit them from behind when they're in the incoming jump state, they just can't block it. So you'd have to fix that too. But if you fix the rest of the things, like if you fixed infinites and you fixed Sentinel's unblockable and the rest of that stuff, like the game would become vastly more unbalanced, because having infinites is what makes Iron Man viable at all.
Right.
If he could just hit you and do like 30%, you wouldn't be scared of anything, right? Cable would still be able to AHVB everybody to death. Storm Scent would still be able to do the DHC that kills you. And even if you fix that, Sentinel just hitting you does like 60% damage with basic launch 1, 2, 3, 4 rocket punch. All right, I guess I'll say this like with emphasis. You don't fix a game by nerfing the heck out of the stuff that's good unless it is to the point of being broken. You fix a game by giving all the characters that don't have options in those situations, right? Donis doesn't have an air throw, for crying out loud. Tron's drill, her main way of doing damage, is punishable on block and punishable on hit by half the characters in the game. You can do a drill mid-stage against Cable, and not only does it give him a bar and a half of meter, he can Viper Beam you, or he can AHVB you for doing it, for hitting him, right? you don't fix Marvel 2 by nerfing the top tiers. You would fix Marvel 2 by giving most of the low tiers an air dash of some kind, air options or mobility of some kind, higher health. Like pretty much the only thing that you would do to top tiers is like lower Sentinel's health, because he was supposed to be big and slow and balanced by health, and he turned out to be big and fast and hurt you a lot and also have the highest health in the game. But like there's not a lot that you need to do to the rest of the top tiers, because Marvel 2 is another interesting case, because one of the reasons that people like it so much is that you actually have to think on defense a whole bunch, because none of the good characters have reversals, right? Magneto doesn't have a dragon punch, Storm doesn't have a dragon punch, Sentinel doesn't have a dragon punch, Spiral has a teleport but you can punish it, like Cable has a dragon punch, but the most that he gets off of it, if he actually hits you with it, unless you are like frame perfect when you cancel the HVB, is he puts you back at full screen, or if you blocked it, he wastes a bar meter and is safe. The vast majority of the top tier play has to hold resets and has to hold Oki, because you can block and call your assist and get your invincible DP eventually, and they then have to give up their offense. But they have like 24 frames in there to just do whatever they want. And if they happen to hit you, then you're going to lose at least one character. So there's a lot of risk on both sides, and there isn't really that option of just reversaling out of everything. So when you're playing on offense, you can almost remove that from your thought process, right? Which is one of the reasons why like Ken and Juggernaut do so well, especially against good Marvel players, is because like worrying about wake up reversals that will kill you is not really part of the Marvel ethos. Another key difference in Marvel 2 is that when you air dash, you use it up, right? So you have one air dash, you have no more air dash. And the only way that you get that back is when you jump. So if you triangle jump someone and then they hit you, you do not have an air dash when you recover from that hit stun. So you actually have to hold that reset, right? Whereas in Marvel 3, when you get your air tech, you get all your air options back, and you can call an assist, which is insane, even if you're at super jump height. But you get your air options back, and you can just up air dash if your character has an air dash out of everything. So like there's a lot of stuff that came together to make Marvel 2 the way it is. And I remember most of it because I did a bunch of research to try to make Skullgirls a similar thing on purpose. But there's a lot of stuff that just worked out that made Marvel 2 the incredible game that it is, just by luck. So you got to give those developers a lot of credit. They went from no assists and 2-player games to inventing the concept of assists and the assist button, and 3 character teams, inventing DHCs, and inventing the snapback, right? Marvel 2 would be a vastly different game without a snapback. Look at Cross Tekken.
I wish they had a snapback so bad. That was
well, but then the problem. Okay, so then you look at Cross Tekken and you think, so just treating it as a case study, right? If Cross Tekken had snapback, they would have had to remove the you kill one character, you win the round, because you could just keep that character in every time they tag them out. The next hit you landed, that character with no health would be coming back in.
I think my beef with Cross Tekken was the fact that they regained life so fast, which I guess is another topic. But like,
I mean, if you want to talk about Cross Tekken, there's an interesting analysis that you can do, which is this.
Yeah.
The health values and the damage values for Cross Tekken are almost exactly what they are in Street Fighter 4. Okay? So if you look at Cross Tekken, everybody remembers, holy crap, there were a lot of timeouts, even while people were really playing. Yeah. Right? And the reason for that is Street Fighter 4 actually did a really good job with the timer, right? Small design philosophy aside here.
Sure.
The timer in a fighting game is not something that you should never have to think about. If you do a good job with your game, the timer is for runaway and zoning characters to win with approximately the same amount of effort that rushdown characters win with. The way that we decided on how long the timer was going to be in Skullgirls is we had a bunch of people play matches and recorded how long it took for the other character to get killed. And the timer's like that plus 10 seconds, because we knew people would get better at killing characters. So the timer was only ever going to get like longer from a survival perspective. But the goal of the timer is to award the win to the characters that are not rushdown at approximately the same point at which rushdown characters would kill you. So the point that I was making was they did a good job with the timer in Street Fighter 4. If you look at a bunch of Street Fighter 4 matches, there's like 15 to 9-ish seconds left, unless somebody gets stomped, right? But like if it's a good match with like neutral and, you know, things like that happening, there's like not a lot of time left when you get to the end, right? So now consider Street Fighter 4. You have life bars that are a certain size, damage that is a certain amount, but everybody getting beaten up gets a bonus of about 400 damage from the Ultra that they can do. So Street Fighter 4 has some damage numbers that are distributed throughout the game, and then everybody basically gets a bonus 400-ish damage every round.
Is that the reason? Is this the reason why everybody hated Elena? Was because she had her heal super or heal ultra in like Ultra Street Fighter 4, like the last version of Street Fighter 4, like she could just heal back up and just kind of lame rounds out and get timeouts most of the time.
So part of it is that Street Fighter 4 had such a good timer, and Elena had such a decently high amount of health that she could basically elongate her health bar to the point where you probably weren't going to kill her by the time was up, right? And Cross Tekken,
2 ultras.
yeah, well, I mean, also because ultras were based on how much damage you took, and her healing let her take more damage. Like, I'm not going to get into whether the revenge bar is a good design decision in this one, but I mean, I think people hated Elena for a lot of other reasons, in that she had really weird vulnerable boxes, and she was a strange shape, and she had strangely shaped normals and all this stuff. Same reason they don't like her in 3S. But if you look at Cross Tekken now, Cross Tekken took the Street Fighter 4 health bars, the Street Fighter 4 damage values, the Street Fighter 4 time, and doubled the amount of health you have because you have 2 characters on your team. They can't bring in the character that was dying. So unless they kill you, you have another full health bar, and you no longer have 400 bonus damage just for getting hit.
Right.
If you just look at the formula, like the numbers, you know that there are going to be hella timeouts because you have double the health pool and less damage in the same amount of time. You have to increase the damage, increase the time, or lower the health in order for the rounds to end in the same amount of time. Right? Like you can just look at the numbers between the 2 games and know that Cross Tekken is going to have timeouts even when people are playing super well, because Street Fighter 4 is really close to that, and there's more health and less damage. Sorry, I distracted us very much.
Yeah, no, I think this is fantastic. So the question that I had earlier, going all the way back to thinking on while you're getting comboed, the infinite protection system in Skullgirls changed. Was it from original 2-second encore? Do you know?
It changed every time.
Yeah. Okay. So originally, the original IPS, I think we talked about this last time, but standing, crouching, normals counted the same towards the IPS.
By the way, so
yeah, please.
During the development of the game, I had it the way that it is now, which is on the ground, all of your normals are the same. So stand jab, crouch jab, forward jab, and if you have forward or back jab, those are all the same, right? And then jumping is different because it's very, very obviously a different move, and it's in a different state, and it's part of a different chain and whatever. Before the game came out, I thought it would be really nice to people to not make them the same thing, because I thought people were going to complain that the combos were too limited. So I made standing separate from crouching, separate from command for each normal, which meant you had 3 times as many normals to use to start your chain, which meant there were 100% non-infinite combos.
Right.
And that's actually why talking about infinites weirds me out, because you don't really mean infinite. When people use the word infinite, what they mean is something that'll kill you, and also in a lot of cases something that looks boring and repetitive. I'm going to take a small digression and say that the infinite is not even the best way to kill someone with Iron Man in Marvel 2, because it gives the opponent a huge amount of meter. It takes a meter for you because you can't do 100% without a proton cannon. Right. It loses you most of your incoming if they bounce weird in the proton cannon. So there was a player at FFA named Ilan. I think he went by like Iron Ilan online, but he was one of the things that I actually used as my inspiration when I was playing Skullgirls, or when I was making Skullgirls, because he was possibly the best person that I've ever seen at knowing when you were going to get annoyed at something. Like, there's a video that I think Strider Zero took that's like hand cam because this is what we had, right? But that's like the two players playing on the cabinet in Marvel 2. And it's Alon playing, I think it was Finesse, but he lands like throw into Doom into Infinite, and he does 3 reps, and you can see his opponent go, like they visibly like, okay, I'm gonna lose this character, and at exactly that moment, he goes underneath and resets, and
Oh, that's
like
dirty.
basically that's what I was trying to capture with Skullgirls, right? I was trying to capture the ability to take advantage of someone else's frustration and to be as mean as you possibly could, but eliminate the "I touched you, now you die" part. Because I think actually there's a fundamental difference between people that play, I want to say Marvel style games, right? But like, I don't mean Dragon Ball, because Dragon Ball has a bunch of characters and things like that, but it's not a Marvel game because you don't have to pay attention to the same things that you have to pay attention to in Marvel, right? They hit you and you just kind of wait. Um, sure, they set play you on Oki, but like that's not what I think people who played Marvel really liked. I've had a bunch of people tell me when they were learning Skullgirls, and several that I told to learn Marvel 2 while they were learning Marvel 2, that said, what I don't like about this is you never have time to think, right? I'm getting hit, and I can't just like, okay, wait for myself to get knocked down and like have a breather and be invincible for a little while. I have to pay attention the whole time. And as soon as I stop, I get reset, and then I'm going to lose my character. And like, that's the thing that I loved, and that the people that play Marvel 2 like really loved about Marvel 2 is that you can't stop thinking. You shouldn't stop thinking, and the game doesn't force you to stop thinking, right? And that's, I think, something that's missing from a whole bunch of different fighting games. Like that's, I think, the appeal of Marvel and Skullgirls, which I have to say because I made it, but whatever. That is, I think, the appeal of that style of game is that you need to think the entire time that you're playing it. And a lot of people have told me they find it exhausting. But like that's the thing that people who really love it find exhilarating. And I think that's why people don't quit. Right? And I think that's why people who start by playing those types of games, or who really get like drawn into that type of game, can't play a lot of other things because it's not satisfying in the same way.
Right.
The
Yeah, the
opponent
pace is
gets a break,
different.
you get a break. There's no like, now, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. So I guess my question ultimately was, so when you think about the infinite protection system in Skullgirls from its initial development to where it is now, do you
Mm-hmm.
think that it gave the person on defense more opportunities to make decisions, or do you think that it um, kind of forced the attacker to be a little bit more creative with the way they reset, or even both in this case?
Um, Initially, no. Like, very. So, initially, when I made it super nice and then we put the game out, that was a bad idea, right? Because my original goal was X-Men versus Street Fighter with no infinites. And I think I hit that with Vanilla Skullgirls. The problem is, you still die.
Right.
Right? In X-Men versus Street Fighter with no infinites, I can still 100% you. And in Skullgirls, you had things like the Nom loop, which was the best demonstration of any of this, which was Misfortune doing something into Nom, into different chain starter, same thing, into Nom, different chain starter, same thing for your whole life bar, right? And it took forever. And it looked, quote unquote, like an infinite because everything was the same except for the first button you used. So that was definitely the infinite prevention system living up to like the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law, right? Because it prevented there being infinites. Skullgirls is still the only game, I think, since ST not to have any infinites. Yeah, well, provably not have any infinites, right? I mean, there's infinites in Guilty Gear because they don't have hit stun scaling on standing, like the rest of that. They're not useful because Guilty Gear has bursts, but that's different. That's semantics, and I love semantics. Um, but yeah, so it prevented infinite combos. It didn't prevent 100% combos, and it didn't prevent boring, repetitive looking combos, right? It did what it was supposed to do, but what it was supposed to do wasn't enough. There are actually 2 components of preventing infinites that are important in fighting games. One is requiring creativity, right? The point of the way that the infinite prevention system is put together, not only the fact that it works and like you don't have to think about it, is that it forces you to do different things, right? Because you used up the previous thing, so it forces you to do something else. But the other major component is limiting length. So the infinite prevention system by itself doesn't limit length except for when you've exhausted every move your character could possibly do. The undizzy bar, which we added later thanks to Marvel 2, does limit length and means that if you want to be really creative, you have to design what you're going to hit them with around the limitations of length that are now imposed that have nothing to do with infinites at all. They're just specifically about length.
Mm-hmm.
So the infinite prevention part prevents you from doing like jab strong fierce, jab strong fierce, jab strong fierce, and that's your whole combo till you're out of undizzy. And the undizzy prevents you from doing some really long thing that's different every time for the whole life bar. And you need both parts in order for the system to be effective. And you also need to not have any exceptions, right?
Right.
Part of the reason the infinite prevention system is as either strict or loose, depending on which one you think it is because there aren't any exceptions to it. So we had to design something to which there didn't need to be any exceptions for it to work. If you look at games that have other infinite prevention systems like hit stun deterioration, every infinite that exists is because there were exceptions to that system. I'm not even talking about TAC infinites, although TAC is, they got rid of the hit stun scaling completely until you reach neutral on the ground again. So you could do really long, cool looking combos if you landed the guess of the TAC. And then it turned out their definition of neutral was too strict. So you could do things where you landed and immediately did jump start up, and none of those counted as neutral. But even without that, like in vanilla Marvel 2, they added a bunch of exceptions to the middle hits of moves so that the move would combo into itself, right? Like Captain America's Shield Slash was marked as ignoring hit stun deterioration so that it could combo both parts of it.
Right.
But they also marked the second part of it like that, so you could do an infinite because there was no hit stun deterioration. Akuma's Hurricane Kick was the same thing. The middle hits are marked as accepted from the hit stun deterioration. So if you comboed it into itself without getting the last hit, you could do it forever. Mm-hmm. Right? If your system has exceptions, those exceptions will be used to circumvent the system completely. Even in Ultimate, where they fixed most of that, there's no hit stun deterioration on knockdown at all. So Zero has lightning loops because every hit in that combo is a knockdown.
That's why that works. What? Oh, yes. Huh. Didn't know that.
That's why that works.
I was looking for that answer. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. No, like all of the things that are...
I couldn't find it.
All of the things that are infinites in Marvel 3 are either knockdowns, which are not subject to hit stun deterioration, or moves that are marked as an exception, right? So Spencer has the pretty much the only real infinite that you're going to see that like no one even tries to do anymore that's not a TAC infinite, which is just zip, 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 because the zip is the same move every time. Like it's the same animation, the same attack state every time. They just limit you to 3. And because they wanted it to combo into each other, all 3, which is just the 1, right, is marked as ignore hit stun deterioration.
Right.
So it ignores it, and what they tried to do was make it so that the recovery and the startup of the zip was long enough that you couldn't combo the end into the beginning again, and they messed that up. So that one's legit because of an exception, and then Zero's, like, which would be an infinite if he had infinite meter, whatever, is an infinite because the exception is it doesn't apply to knockdown hits ever. And that's actually why most of the long combos that you see from like Shumagorath, for example, are just whole bunches of knockdown hits in a row, right?
Right.
It's blah, 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 blah. Eyes, blah, 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 blah. Stomp, which is a knockdown. Eye Explosion, which is a knockdown, I think. Or a bunch of hits that happen in quick succession that he can move in between, and then Beam, which is a knockdown, and then Super, which is a knockdown into another Eye Explosion, right? So they're all exceptions to the system that they designed. So not a great system if you have to put in exceptions for the system to work.
Yeah. And thus the infinite... I think I've been saying the infinite protection system.
Well, whatever. It's just it's IPS. It's infinite prevention specifically, but like I don't really care.
Sure.
People just call it IPS and it's fine. Yeah, and actually there's another aspect to the IPS in Skullgirls, which is with large apologies to DeKill Sage. I'm sorry. With large apologies to your boy DeKill Sage, is I think the reason why Skullgirls is still a viable game to play, right? Which is the extra aspect to the infinite prevention system, which is not just the system itself, or the undizzy bar, is that it is also designed to discourage or make useless set play. So when you get knocked down, unless you ground tech, your undizzy bar stays where it is. So they're forced to do shorter and shorter combos every time they do a hard knockdown and still hit you because the undizzy hasn't drained at all. So when your undizzy bar is full, you're limited to like 2 chains and then they can burst and that's it. However, there was still set play that was 2 chains into a hard knockdown, same setup, 2 chains into a hard knockdown, which was rewarded with full damage every time. Mm-hmm. So the last aspect of the infinite prevention system that became more than just an infinite prevention system, right? It basically became a single player game prevention system, which is kind of what you want. The last aspect of that system is that when your undizzy bar is full, everything you do is scaled by the maximum possible damage scaling times 2.
Okay, I think I understand that. I'm bad at math.
Well, so the maximum damage scaling I think is like 20%.
Okay.
Like everything goes down to 20% of what it used to do.
Yeah.
So when your undizzy bar is full, it's all 10. So you can continue to hit them and do the set play. And what happens is they get the maximum possible amount of meter from every hit.
Well,
you deal a tiny little bit of damage. So they can take like 3 or 4 of those and then finally get out. Or just do 2 supers to reversal or whatever. So it's like vastly in your worst interest to continue to do set play, and vastly in your best interest to reset people, because that's how you win without them getting the resources and without them having time to think, and by being able to do the most damage.
Yeah.
I also want to say it feels like a pretty big victory, and I imagine that for the Marvel 2 developers, when they see Magneto played or Storm played or like reset heavy gameplay, I imagine it probably felt the same way to them, although they were probably just really happy because their game came out and was massively popular. Yeah. It feels like a pretty big victory to put in a game where you can do 25-second long combos if you spend a bunch of resources, and yet players are intentionally not finishing them, right?
Because it's not worth it.
As a fighting game designer, you spend most of your time making systems to force the person to stop hitting the other person. You limit the length of combos, you change how knockdown works, you add juggle rules, you do everything else to limit the amount of time that the game becomes one player. And if you design your game around resets, the players do that for you. They let the game be 2-player because it's more efficient. Mm-hmm. And that just feels absolutely amazing as a designer, because like all of the systems that you made basically don't matter because the way that the game was put together makes players do that themselves. Like if you could convince people in Hokuto no Ken to stop doing basketball infinites because it was more efficient to kill the opponent without them, you would have had a massive victory on your hands. There is no reason to do that because you can infinite them to death. And thus we've come all the way back to why infinites are not necessarily something that you can ever consider useful.